Hey, welcome to another biology podcast. This one is dealing with the plant kingdom. If you want to say some Latin words, you say kingdom Plantae. There you go. Plantae, your Latin word of the day, means plants. And what does it mean? It means we're dealing with eukaryotic organisms, organisms with cells and a nucleus. All plants are multicellular. It doesn't matter if we're dealing with simple bryophytes, which are non-vascular plants, or pterophytes, gymnosperms, or angiosperms. All plants are multicellular and they're all autotrophic, which means they can make their own food. You know it. So all of them have chloroplasts. They all can make food by converting sunlight into chemical energy. So how are plants able to do this? Well, they're able to bring in carbon dioxide from the environment through tiny little special openings in their leaves called stomata. So they can bring in carbon dioxide. They utilize that carbon dioxide in their chloroplasts with the combination of water to make sugars. That's what they do. So when we say an autotroph in a plant, we're referring to the process of photosynthesis, converting sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to make sugars, and the other byproducts are water and oxygen. So plants will release excess water through their stomata, and they'll release that oxygen through their stomata as well. So oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis, as are these sugars, but the plants utilize those sugars for growing and developing and for reproducing. And we have found these sugars to be a valuable asset to our own growth and development, because I know I like sweets. And in terms of reproduction, plants typically can do it both ways. They're able to asexually reproduce. So if you think of planting a bulb in the ground, a tulip bulb, you plant them in the fall, and then also next spring they're going to grow again. We don't plant the seed, we plant the bulb, and they have enough genetic information in that bulb to actually grow. Many plants, you can actually make a cutting of a plant and plant it in some soil, and it will actually develop roots, and the stems will go from there. So many different plants can reproduce asexually because their cells have all the genetic information that it needs just to make the entire plant. But many plants are able to reproduce sexually. So if you think of gymnosperms, they're able to produce cones. So the pine cones are their reproductive parts. They contain the pollen, and the pollen can then be received by the female part of the flower and produce the seed. So in angiosperms are the flowering plants. So flowering plants typically have both male and female parts. Some plants have just the male parts, and some plants have just the female parts. So we're not going to get into the details about the life cycle of plant reproduction, but all of you are definitely aware of pollen that's produced from different types of plants, different times of the year. Many of us develop allergies to the pollen that's released into the atmosphere, and we breathe that stuff in, and it makes us sick. It gives us some allergic reactions, and we have to take some medicine maybe to relieve our sinuses. So ultimately, that pollen is searching for a home to fertilize the ovule, and once it fertilizes the ovule, it's going to make the seed, and the seed is then able to reproduce or grow and develop into the adult plant. So plants have the ability to reproduce asexually and sexually. And what we're looking at in class for plant cells and their specialization, we'll look at an aquatic plant just because we can easily see all of these components. We'll look at the stem of a plant, so we'll compare a monocot and a dicot stem. So these are two different types of vascular plants. We will observe some fresh pollen underneath the microscope, a basic leaf, and we'll try to find these special cells on the surface called the guard cells, and these are useful for regulating those gases that I mentioned about, bringing in the CO2 and expelling oxygen back into the atmosphere. We'll also take a look at some onion cells, just because they're very easy to view, and we can see a nucleus and a nucleolus, and we can see their cell wall very, very easily. And then we'll look at cork cells, just because one of the first cells that was ever viewed underneath the microscope was a cork cell. So plants, pretty unique, pretty diverse, a lot to look at. We're going to try to just look at a few examples to see some of the specialization that they have in class. Thanks for listening, and we will see you tomorrow in class.